Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Welcome. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. 2 Canadians were killed following an Israeli airstrike in Lebanon. This follows news that Hezbollah is setting up rocket installations in civilian buildings. CTV News has offered an on-air apology following a story produced on Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and his non-confidence motion. And a unique vending machine will be set up in Lethbridge, allowing you an opportunity to donate to various charities around the world.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, as expected, the Trudeau Liberal minority government survived the non-confidence vote at the House of Commons on Wednesday. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre brought forth a vote saying Canadians have lost confidence in Justin Trudeau and the Liberal NDP coalition. The Liberals survived thanks to both the NDP and Bloc voting against the Tory motion, which the Conservatives were hoping would have triggered a carbon tax election. The final tally was 211 MPs voting against the motion and 120 in favour of it. Poilievre explained in more detail why he brought forth that non-confidence vote. He says Canadians cannot simply keep up with the high cost of living anymore.
That's why I welcome every single time they talk about my experience in government is doing the exact same things that I would like to do in the future, which is to expand the opportunity, expand the promise of this country. But that promise, after 9 years of the NDP Liberal Prime Minister, is broken. Everything costs more, with 2 million people lined up at food banks because they cannot afford food. This is a record-smashing number. 1 in 10 Torontonians now eat at a food bank every single month. Housing costs have doubled, so that 2/3 of young people believe they will never be able to afford a home. That has never happened in Canadian history. And we see it most tragically in our streets, where there are now 1,800 homeless encampments across Canada, across Ontario. 35 in Halifax. Quaint, beautiful, once prosperous Halifax has 35 homeless encampments. The Prime Minister admits in his own press releases 1 in 4 kids are not getting enough food.
Now, the Bloc, which voted against the Tory motion, has given the Liberals a deadline of October the 29th to pass 2 of its private members' bills. Now, one is to increase support for seniors, and the other to protect supply management, or party officials say they will actively work to bring down the government. You know, as a news organization, it is rarely good to become the news. Well, that's exactly what happened with CTV News. The network offered an on-air apology after an edited clip of Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre went to air and not what he originally said. Poilievre has repeatedly said the non-confidence motion was because of the carbon tax, but that portion of the clip was edited out. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer took to social media to express his disappointment in the network.
It's no wonder distrust in the media is at an all-time high. It's because Canadians are seeing more and more examples of how they twist the truth. But this one takes the cake. I've never seen anything like this. CTV News just got caught creating fake news. They were trying to promote a government talking point, and they took a clip of Pierre Poilievre making a statement about the carbon tax and giving Canadians a carbon tax election, and they spliced it together to do this.
While the continuation of the plan appears safe for now, the events of the last week have raised new questions over the plan's future.
That's why we need to put forward a motion.
The Conservatives announced a non-confidence vote.
That's why it's time to put forward a motion for a carbon tax election. That's why it's time we need to put forward a motion for a carbon.
The Conservatives announced a non-confidence.
Pierre never actually said that sentence. This is the lengths that they'll go to try to protect the Liberals and take your attention off of the carbon tax and all the damage it's doing to Canadians. This is what Conservatives are up against, not just the Liberals and NDP, but their friends in the media, the bought and paid for parliamentary press gallery that will do everything they can to present Liberal policies in a favourable light and make you believe things that aren't even true about the Conservatives. Next time you see a CTV news broadcast painting Conservatives in a negative light, ask yourself this one question: did that even really happen?
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says despite his very low approval ratings here in Canada, he will remain on as Liberal leader. He says serious politicians need to not focus on slogans, but instead on the global crises that are making life very difficult for Canadians.
I think the focus needs to remain on how we prepare and invest in Canadians for the challenging times ahead, the challenging world that we all live in that is impacted every day by geopolitical and global forces that impact on prices at the grocery store, that impact on prices at the pump, that impact on housing, and impact on just about everything that Canadians are challenged with. And the need to step up with solutions, not slogans, to take seriously the challenges that Canadians are facing instead of amplifying them and causing more fear and division. Every politician has a choice about why they serve, of what they're trying to do, how they're trying to help. And my focus is very much, and always has been, on how to serve Canadians and build a better future.
2 Canadians were tragically killed in Lebanon during Israeli airstrikes in the southern part of the country. They've been identified as Hussein and Dad Tabaja, a husband and wife. According to their family, they were trying to leave their home in southern Lebanon when their vehicle was hit by an airstrike in heavy traffic. Israel continues its attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. A new wave of airstrikes reportedly killed more than 50 people, bringing the total amount of casualties to over 600. After Israel thwarted a Hezbollah missile strike aimed at Tel Aviv on Wednesday, the Israeli army chief hinted on the military's preparation for a ground invasion into Lebanon. The Canadian government is continuing to urge all Canadians in Lebanon to leave the country as soon as possible. Now, according to TBN Israel correspondent Yair Pinto, the Israel Defense Forces attacked more than 1,300 targets in Lebanon, destroying a number of rocket launchers and taking out many terrorists.
Among them was Ali Karachi, number 3 in Hezbollah and a commander of the terrorist organization's Southern Front. The Israeli government also confirmed that a special situation that amounts to martial law is necessary in the home front for the near future, with the possibility that it could be extended if needed. This is because Hezbollah is firing hundreds of rockets and missiles at Israeli cities, including Haifa. It also included Israeli communities in Samaria, as well as Palestinian villages. After sending thousands of messages to residents of southern Lebanon to evacuate areas where Hezbollah is storing weapons and revealing a cruise missile in a home, Israel revealed even more stockpiles of cruise missiles and other weapons stored in civilian areas further north in the country. The strikes on these targets began. IDF spokesman Daniel Agari explained to the media that Israel had attacked terrorist targets of Hezbollah throughout Lebanon, and we are still attacking.
Well, closer to home, the Alberta government announced that it will be bringing mobile lung screening to the rural parts of the province. Officials say having this technology available will help with early detection and treatment and help bridge the gap in the healthcare system. The mobile screening program will receive a $1.5 million grant from the province, which will then be matched by the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says the first unit will be available sometime next spring.
These mobile units will be able to complete more than 4,000 pulmonary function tests and up to 6,000 CT scans per year, a game changer for Albertans living in rural and remote communities. We all know someone who's been affected by cancer or other serious lung conditions. Every loss, and I mean every loss, is one loss too many. We owe it to ourselves, to our children, to our grandchildren, to future generations, all our loved ones, to do whatever we can to prevent future cases and to improve treatments and outcomes.
A new study says Alberta has the 5th highest average star rating for hospitals. The research done by Presler Injury Lawyers reviewed Google data as to which provinces had the highest and lowest ratings here in Canada. The province with the best access to patient care was Manitoba, following an analysis of 19 hospitals. Second place was British Columbia after 66 hospitals were analyzed. Quebec came in third with their 138 healthcare facilities. Saskatchewan was number 4 based on reviews of 17 hospitals. And again, Alberta was ranked 5th following Google reviews of 74 hospitals. Nova Scotia was number 6 with their 21 hospitals. Ontario ranked number 7 following an analysis of 147 healthcare facilities, and New Brunswick, with their 15 hospitals, was ranked number 8. The findings by Presler injury lawyers only feature the top 8 provinces. A 28-year-old man was arrested in Calgary following a large drug bust. Police say back on August the 13th, they seized $500,000 worth of drugs and guns. They say after raiding 2 homes, they confiscated a large amount of cocaine, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, 5 handguns with ammunition, and more than $36,000 in cash. One of the firearms was previously reported stolen. Juan Kiao faces a wide variety of charges, including drug possession, drug trafficking, and unauthorized possession of a firearm. Lethbridge police are investigating a break-in at a downtown ice cream shop that occurred on Monday. Crime and vandalism have been on the rise in our city, as many local business owners fear they could be the next target. And there are also some folks coming to the rescue of those business owners who've been hit pretty hard. BCN's Landon Hickok has that story.
A large lineup of people gathered at Cookie Crimes on Wednesday, a downtown ice cream store that has gone through major challenges as of late. On Monday, Lethbridge police say multiple suspects broke through the store's front window at around 1 a.m. and stole approximately $1,500 in ice cream and other property and caused $1,000 in damages. The police released photos of 10 suspects, 2 who they believe caused the initial break-in, and 8 more during the night entered the store and walked out with stolen goods. With the store reopening for the first time since the incident on Wednesday, the store owners say despite the hardship, they have received a tremendous level of community support.
It's been a very stressful week. This isn't our first break-in. This is our 4th one since Boxing Day. So it's been financially kind of troubling. So there's definitely some psychological challenges we're having there, but we're getting an outpouring of support, and we're really excited to be open today and hopefully drive up some revenue and recoup the cost of our window.
Another downtown business, Gifty's Boutique, has seen a number of crime and vandalism incidents in the past. The most recent incident saw someone break past the security roller and break through the glass door. The business owner, Peter, says damages are estimated at $1,000 and says up to a quarter of goods in the store were stolen. Peter believes extra security measures have to be put in place to make downtown a safer place for residents and visitors.
I feel like maybe the police should be patrolling like every 1 hour or something, just every single street that this business is on, if I'm not wrong, like just to drive around, just to see.
But police aren't the only ones that are advocating to support downtown businesses.
I find personally that the more people are downtown, the less untoward stuff seems to be happening. So what I would say is everybody can support downtown if more people come downtown. If we make an excuse to support those small family businesses instead of maybe going to the big box store, maybe going to a crumble cookie, maybe come to Cookie Crimes instead, right? Support a local chain.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Now, the Lethbridge Police Service is asking anyone who has information to help them with their investigation of the Cookie Crimes break-in or any of the 10 suspects involved to give them a call right away at 403-328-4444. Or call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. You know, Christmas is fast approaching. It's always a special time to give and to receive. Now, in the same spirit of good deeds, many Canadians like to give to those most in need. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Lethbridge is launching the Light the World Giving Machine initiative. McCall Johnson, committee member of the group, says the program has been carried out since 2017 and its contributions have totaled more than $32 million. Johnson explains how this charity program actually works.
So it'll work exactly like a vending machine. So you'll go in and say, oh, I would like to buy winter boots for Streets Alive. You'll punch in the code, the card will drop. And then when all is over, then the money will go to be purchased for that item or good or service. There will be 30 different items to choose from. Each charity will have their own row of items. And so we have YWCA of Lethbridge, Woods Homes, Lethbridge Family Services Immigration, Streets Alive, and McMahon Youth and Family Services. And they have each given us items to put these cards in this machine so you can go in and, for example, through WaterAid, you can buy like a water pump for somebody in need somewhere in the world. So if I purchase a water pump, the card will drop. And at the end, then we'll purchase a water pump and it will go to someone. They range from $5 to $135. Some of those items are baby chicks, winter boots, thermal socks, baby formula, interview clothing, haircuts, school lunches, emergency food supply, water pumps, a safe berth. There's quite a variety of different things. So 100% of all donations go directly to those charities.
Johnson says there will be 3 vending machines set up at Park Place Mall in Lethbridge from November the 15th to December 4th of this year. With the Canadian Hockey League announcing that Lethbridge is one of 5 cities in the running to host the 2026 Memorial Cup tournament, members of the city and the team say they're prepared to host another major national event. Lethbridge is in contention for hosting the major junior championship along with Medicine Hat. The CHL will announce the host city by December.
We're going to prove it that the Lethbridge community can do this. We have such a great community. It's such a great model. The community-owned team. We've been here for almost since 1986. We've proven ourselves that we're sustainable and been able to last in the league for that long. Everybody's come on board and has helped us put the bid together, given us all the information that we need. And again, we're checking all the boxes, which is the key thing. Lethbridge is ready, and why not Lethbridge?
Can we get the teams here? Yes, we can. Have we got accommodations here? Yes, we can. Have we got enough rooms here at the arena to accommodate everybody that's coming here? Yes, we do. Do we have the infrastructure? Yes, we do. Do we have volunteers? Hello? Yes, we do. It's just everything is absolutely positive, and I can't wait to find out that we will win the Memorial Cup bid, and can't wait to watch the Hurricanes in the finale.
On top of the possibility of preparing for a Memorial Cup tournament, the City and the Canes are also ready to honor the end of National Truth and Reconciliation Week with Indigenous Hockey Night this Friday night. The next home game will feature the national anthem sung in both English and Blackfoot. Orange shirts will also be sold that night, with proceeds going to support the All Kids Can Play initiative.
We were so excited when the Hurricanes reached out to us and with this idea of having an Indigenous night, and it's just another reason to showcase Indigenous culture and the reconciliation within the city, right? There's a lot of non-Indigenous organizations that want to support and help out, and this is just another amazing example of what we can do.
The Hurricanes will host the Swift Current Broncos with puck drop this Friday night at 7 o'clock. Many Indigenous people have expressed hurt and outrage regarding the 60s scoop where thousands of Indigenous children were taken from their homes and placed in residential schools. Canada continues its efforts towards reconciliation between the country and our Indigenous people for this action on account of the Canadian government. Reverend Deborah Manous, president of Shekinah Aboriginal Ministries, is a 60s scoop survivor and residential school survivor, and she shares her thoughts on the kinds of efforts that have been made so far.
I believe there are various things that need to happen, not just giving out money, because that's not always going to be, the whole thing that fixes everything, right? Like, I was there actually when the Prime Minister, I was in Ottawa when he gave that, apology. And that was such a huge thing. I was with a lot of non-believers, but for me, him saying that was huge. That was huge. For him to say that, to acknowledge that, because I'm a minister and I know the Bible and what it talks about in, somebody at the high level like that, the highest level in the country, to apologize to the people is a tremendous, tremendous thing.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Reverend Deborah Manous, residential school survivor, and BCN's Jeanette Roche coming up later in our program. Well, it was mostly sunny and hot again today in Lethbridge as we hovered right around that 30-degree mark. Will the summer-like temps be sticking around? A complete look at the weather pictures coming up. It was another spectacular day here in Lethbridge as we hovered right around that 30-degree mark. Tonight, it should be partly cloudy with a low near 13 degrees. Thursday, a few rain clouds will be moving into our region. We should see a little moisture and a high near 20 degrees. Friday, clearing up with a high near 24. And not a bad weekend is shaping up so far either. Expect lots of sunshine and 22 degrees on Saturday. A chance of showers and clouds developing with a high of 17 on Sunday. For National Truth and Reconciliation holiday Monday in Lethbridge, expect a mainly cloudy day with a high again near 17. Tuesday, sunshine mixed with cloud and the mercury climbing to 22. Now, the average high for this time of year is 18 degrees and an average low of 4. The record high was 33 degrees set back in 2011, and the record low was a very chilly -16 in 1934. The sun rose at 7:23 and will set at 7:21. Let's have a look at how the rest of the country is shaping up for Thursday now. Expect clouds and showers in both Victoria and Vancouver, and a high of 14 degrees in both cities. Rain at 18 is on tap for Calgary. Mainly sunny at 17 degrees for Edmonton on Thursday. Sunshine mixed with clouds and a high of 24 degrees in Regina. Overcast with rain and a high of only 19 degrees for Saskatoon. A scorching hot 28 with sunshine is expected in Winnipeg on Thursday. Let's have a look at the central part of the country. Sunshine at 23 for Toronto. Clouds with showers at 21 for Ottawa. Montreal should also receive a bit of moisture and a high of 19 degrees. In Atlantic Canada, expect overcast conditions with rain in Fredericton and a high of 18. Sun mixed with clouds at 19 degrees for Halifax. Mainly cloudy and 18 degrees for Charlottetown. And at St. John's, expect clouds and rain and a high of only 11 degrees on Thursday. Stats Canada says our population reached 41.3 million people on Canada Day. The agency says around 250,000 people moved to our country in the second quarter, showing a growth of 0.6%. That was actually slower than the same quarters last year and back in 2022. The increase in population was almost entirely due to international migration, which added 240,000 people. Alberta posted the fastest growth rate among the provinces and territories, with an increase of 1% for the quarter. The Northwest Territories, on the other hand, was the slowest at just 0.1% growth. Coca-Cola is discontinuing its newest permanent flavor in both Canada and the United States just 7 months after putting it on store shelves. The beverage giant says Coca-Cola Spiced and Zero Sugar will be phased out and replaced with a new flavor next year. It went on sale last February. At the time, Coke said it would be the first permanent new addition to its North American portfolio in 3 years. Officials at Coke didn't say what went wrong, but the product's name may have confused buyers since it did not taste very spicy at all. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 46 points on the day to finish at 23,905. The Dow was down 293 points to 41,914. The S&P 500 was down 10 on the day to 5722, and the NASDAQ was up 7 points to 18,082. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.74 to $69.82 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 6 cents to $2.64 U.S. Gold was down $26.03 on the day to $26.5647 U.S. an ounce, and silver was down 30 cents to $31.80 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.81 per bushel, barley's at $6.14, canola's at $13.80, and corn is at $7.44 per bushel. Live cattle October contract was down $1.30 to $183.15. Feeder cattle were up 43 cents to $245.38. And lean hogs October contract was up 90 cents to $87.33. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.20 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, the Trudeau Liberal minority government survived the non-confidence vote at the House of Commons on Wednesday. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre brought forth the vote, saying Canadians have lost confidence in Justin Trudeau and the Liberal NDP coalition. The final vote tally was 211 against the Tory motion and 120 in support of it. The Liberals survived thanks to both the NDP and Bloc voting against the Tory motion, which the Conservatives were hoping would have triggered a carbon tax election. The next federal election is slated for October of 2025. This is National Truth and Reconciliation Week here in Canada. Coming up, we're going to chat with Deborah Manous. She's president of the Aboriginal Ministries Association of Canada about what this time of year really means to her and talk about her experience as a 60 Scoop survivor. Catch the full interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
Efforts in Canada continue working towards reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples, but not everyone agrees as to how that should happen and what needs to be done. So joining me today to discuss this is Deborah Manous. She is a reverend and the president of the Shekinah Aboriginal Ministries Association of Alberta. She also has her master's in Christian ministries, I believe. Deborah, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I'm so blessed and honored to be here and to share my perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Deborah, I understand that you yourself attended a residential school. You've also, I believe, written a book about your experience called Scooped, A Stolen Generation. Can you maybe share what your experience was like?
Yes, definitely. I basically had been taken away from my family at a very young age. I was 4, and there was 6 in my family. Myself and my older brother, we went into one home, and the other children were all separated into 3 different homes. We were all into 3 different homes, and our family, basically, my grandfather, he was the hereditary chief of the community in Calling Lake, which is about 130 miles north of Edmonton, and they went after the kids that were, predominantly, leaders in the community. So then everybody just followed suit. So this was everywhere, all across Canada, that had happened. And fortunately, I was in a good home at the beginning. I was in a wonderful home with some people that were Christian, that were loving and kind. And later on, I went into a facility because they had, wanted us to be switched. And a lot of times that was a problem. So many children, unfortunately, were taken from one facility to another, one home to another. And that caused a lot of, problems for the children. So I do talk about that in my book quite a bit, residential school and what it looked like and how it affected, our people and the whole, system that it had, developed into this nation. And anyways, the scooped part of it, basically, I had learned as I was doing research on the book, was that the term was coined by a worker. She was a social worker. This was during the early 60s.
Yeah,
And
you're
she
talking
said,
about the 60s scoop, right?
yeah,
Which
the 60s
you
scoop.
were a part of.
Yeah. And she basically was going into the home and into different communities, into the homes, scooping up the kids, leaving. Another home, scooping up the kids, leaving. And she coined the term, I'm scooping the kids. So this became the term for the 60s scoop. And there were like pictures all across Canada in the media, as well as newspapers is the media, and magazines and whatnot, of Native children that were being adopted all across Canada and taken into other countries, into a lot of the states, but I heard of other children going into other countries as well. So they were just, adopted out, and the poor parents never got to see their children again.
That is
So,
unbelievable, Deborah. Did you
yeah.
ever see your parents again? Or
Oh
your
yeah,
other-
I did. Like later on in like my teens, I was able to finally connect with my father and my stepmom. My mom had passed away, unfortunately, when I was 9 while I was in the home. And it had a great impact upon me, as well as my brothers and sisters. And the whole idea of living in different homes all those years and then coming back to our community, not knowing our language, not knowing our people, not knowing, different aspects of our Indigenous lifestyle. When we came back to the community, it was very hard for us to be able to cope with that and to deal with that. Some ended up, in different situations because of it. Myself, well, God had a plan for me. There was something that hit our community, and there was a powerful, powerful move of God. A revival happened, actually. And when I was 16, and it turned the place upside down for God. It was wonderful. But not all communities were as blessed and fortunate. And, many had suffered great deal, along with myself. I had many years of dysfunction, many years of not knowing who I was, the identity problems, and, just not having a lot of trust for people that were not my people group for many years. And until, God got a hold of me and healed and restored my life and my
Right.
heart.
It just makes me wonder, how did these people have the right to do that, to go into other people's homes and steal their children away from them? Did you end up feeling a lot of anger towards these people, or towards the church, or towards white people in general?
Yes, I did. I had many years where I felt so much resentment, so much pain and loss, of course, and I felt hatred, towards the Caucasian group, and I was like that for many years. I was in denial of it until, when God shows us where our heart truly is, then it's just grace the whole time that's on our lives. But basically, I was, just so full of I guess, wanting to get back somehow or another. For many years I was like that. And until, God got a hold of my life.
Yeah. So looking back, Deborah, do you believe that the church and the government leaders were intentionally trying to harm First Nations people through this residential school program? Or do you think, that they were like well-intentioned at the time and simply didn't understand the consequences of this, or, how it would have had such a negative impact?
Well, I think that in some aspects, yes, they were blind by the fact, like, just kind of go in, oh, we're going to, help them to assimilate, help them to, come to live in a different lifestyle, come to, be in this, society and live like everybody else. And this is how we're going to do it. So they got the churches involved, the different churches involved, the Anglican, the Catholic. I know for that, for my researching with residential schools, that this was the case, as well as, it moved on into 60 Scoop. But it was I guess at the beginning, something they thought was a good thing for our people.
And that's not to give them a pass on this, at all,
No,
because of what happened. It
no,
was
but it is
terrible.
good to understand the facts, and this is just the facts. And the facts is this is actually what had happened. And then later on, when somebody gets to know and understand what they're doing, then we have to be accountable for it, right? So, yeah.
And Deborah, for reconciliation to happen, the offending party usually must acknowledge the wrongs and apologize and ask for forgiveness and make restitution where needed. So there has been a lot of apologies made both from the church and the federal government, and there have been very large sums of money paid to Indigenous groups. But has this been helpful? Do you think more of these kinds of things need to happen?
Yeah, I believe there are various things that need to happen, not just giving out money, because that's not always going to be, the whole thing that fixes everything, right? Like, I was there actually when the Prime Minister, I was in Ottawa when he gave that, apology. And that was such a huge thing. I was with a lot of non-believers, but for me, him saying that was huge. That was huge for him to say that, to acknowledge that, because I'm a minister and I know the Bible and what it talks about in, somebody at the high level like that, the highest level in the country, to apologize to the people is a tremendous thing. And then the ramifications of it afterwards, and all the different things that came about because of it, and the payments that are going on. I believe that, that has helped, but I also believe that there needs to be, more programs, like, there's this one where there's the healing blanket, where you sit and you kind of learn about the community, you learn how it is to have been a residential school survivor child, and you sit on this blanket Like that was tremendous for me to learn about that. That kind of thing needs to happen more, like in our school systems, right? And different things like if people are going into jobs that they need to learn about that kind of thing, as well as, other types of things that can occur where you're employing more First Nations people. I say more in the church, because here in Edmonton, there is not a large population of First Nations ministers within the churches here employed that I see. I've been living here since the 70s, me and my family. I probably witnessed maybe 2 churches in the whole city that actually wanted First Nations people to be a part of their, denomination and work within the system. And it's a real problem with racism here. And Edmonton is actually the largest population of Indigenous people in all of Canada now. It has surpassed Winnipeg in the last couple of years, where it's almost, what is it, 700,000 that is in the city alone of First Nations, and all of them, well, not all of them, I'd say probably about 75% are under the age of 18, 19 years old. So that's huge.
That is.
And they're moving from their native communities into the city. So we could easily have 15 churches and work with our people with whatever needs that they have, and still not have enough, right? So that's a big thing. I as a First Nations minister working with First Nations youth in the city, I would really love to see more of that.
Yeah, no kidding. So are there any particular things you'd like to see Canadian churches to do to foster healing and reconciliation?
Well, like I said, with the healing blanket, where you're sitting,
that's very practical.
Yeah, it is very, exactly. It's very practical, as well as doing more programs where you're feeding the First Nations.
Yeah.
Like I go downtown on a regular basis just to see, my brothers and sisters that are on the street, just to see. I live in the south side of the city. I'm not around it, but I go to remember who was the ones that God reached out to, who was the ones that Jesus reached out to. So I see a lot of my people, unfortunately, there, besides other nations, and more programs to be helping, the people that are on the street. Like my own family goes out every winter and will take a little baggie with socks, some practical little items a person would use, hand warmers, right? Mittens, gloves, toque, and a little $5 Starbucks card. And they're so appreciative. They're so appreciative of it that somebody actually cared enough to give them that, right?
So along those lines, as we talked about what the churches and schools and employers can do, are there some practical things that you'd like to see the government do that would foster better relations with First Nations people?
I guess for better relations would be for them to actually, I wanted to see a program like this where they actually went and lived in a Native community for maybe a month, some of the leaders to come in there and live and see exactly how they live. I just want to give a little tiny example. When I was just a little girl, right? And my family, they were very, very predominant in feeding the whole community. And my grandfather and a lot of men, they would go out. This is part of our culture. And they would hunt. They would hunt for, moose or deer. And they'd bring back, maybe 10 or 12 moose, and they would cut them up, divvy it up and give it to the whole community, 40, 50 families. Okay. And I remember that time it was just a wonderful time. And my aunts and my mom and my grandmothers, they were cutting up the meat, and some of the blood spilt on a carpet. Well, a few days later, a worker comes in and sees the blood. She doesn't understand, that's from cutting up meat. This is a traditional thing that we did. So us kids were taken away for that.
Because of that.
Yeah, because of that.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And it was terrible. I still think about it to this day. I was just thinking about it this morning. It's like, there's a little story that I can share. Like, they need to come in and see how we live, what we live like. You know, the way that we put our home isn't the way that somebody else, because there's a reason for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
cultural different happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right in our own
It's
country.
good to understand.
Yeah.
Like, I have a love for cultures now, like different nations now, because of what I've been through.
Oh, gosh. Amazing, Deborah. Your story, we're out of time here, but we could talk about this all day. Seriously, you've got so many stories to tell, but we thank you so much for being with us today, Deborah. Really appreciate having you on.
God bless you.
Deborah Manoose is the president of the Shekinah Aboriginal Ministries Association of Alberta. Albertans should be able to feel safe in their homes and communities, whether they live in a big city or a rural area. But over the last number of years, we've been hearing a lot of complaints about increasing rural crime. However, today's guest has some encouraging news in this area. Joining us is RCMP Superintendent Mike McCauley from the Community Safety and Wellbeing Branch. Welcome to Bridge City News, Mike. Great to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, so tell us about the good news here. Apparently, rural crime in most of southern Alberta has actually decreased since 2023.
Yeah, it's. I looked at the numbers again. It's funny because in my branch, I'm in charge of crime reduction, and we focus more on offenders. We focus more on the root causes of crime versus the numbers. Of course, the numbers are important. They do tell a story, but there's so little we can control about that. But it is extremely positive to hear that many of the main drivers of crime in rural Alberta and especially in southern Alberta have decreased. Break-in enters are down 18% over the same period of last year. Theft of motor vehicles are down around 22%, and theft of over 5,000 down around 17%. So those are very encouraging numbers.
That is really encouraging. I know, I was looking at some stats as well from what you guys, RCMP, are saying. So from January to March, it looks like compared to the same period last year, there have been even fewer person crime offenses, person against person, I guess that is, 76 less, 213 fewer property crimes, and 373 less total criminal code offenses. And like you said, break-in enters dropped 18.4% in vehicles. So what do you think is leading to this wonderful news that it's we're seeing this significant decrease?
Yeah, so there's a few things I'll speak to. It's to be completely blunt, there's not a lot we can do to control the numbers. There's work we can do to, again, we tackle the root causes of crime, we tackle the root causes of victimization, and I think, and I'll share some of that. And all we can do is do the best we can in those areas and to provide the most programming to help Albertans and to try and counteract this. But I can tell you that in the last 5 years, there's actually been around 33% drop in those key property crime areas in southern Alberta, which is massive. And in 2020, they created the position I'm in now. I wasn't the original member in that position, but they created the crime reduction strategy portion of policing in Alberta, and they really put a focus on rural crime and a focus on tackling those root causes. And we saw a major decrease that first year and a half, and then it leveled off a little bit. And in 2 years ago, we created the Community Safety Wellbeing Branch, which is an even more enhanced, robust strategy when it comes to tackling these issues. And we're starting to see the benefits of that. Mm-hmm. I will give a lot of credit to the frontline members because the hardworking frontline members, if they're not there to do the policing, none of this matters. None of the programming we can create from a headquarters perspective and a strategy perspective works without those hardworking, dedicated frontline members and our community partners that embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, is this the first significant decrease that we've seen in southern Alberta rural crime in several years, or has it been sort of declining for some time now, or do you really attribute it to sort of what you guys are doing, just the difference that's made?
Well, I'd like to take some credit.
Of course.
Yeah, in the provincial RCMP realm, again, it's been a big focus for the last 5 years, and we have seen the gains in the last 5 years. But it is very promising. These specific stats that brought us here today, it's very promising, and we're going to hopefully continue that trend. The biggest shift we've had, especially in the last, I'll say, year and a half, is again to develop stronger partnerships. We have partnerships with nonprofit agencies. We have partnerships with community groups. We have partnerships with AHS to tackle drug addiction, to tackle mental health, and to really, again, focus on the root causes. Because what we found is that it's all fine. Yes, police have a role to arrest people that commit crimes, and we're happy to do that, and we do it well. But what we've had to shift from, and it is a shift, I would say it's a relatively global shift, is to not just tackle that, but also to walk upstream. So we use the stream analogy. If you picture us, a beautiful stream, and coming down your screen there, at the bottom is where we pick people up and have to arrest them, or perhaps they're in the depths of drug addiction, and that's why they're committing crimes. And often our social services and police and first responders deal with people at their worst at the bottom of that stream. What we've tried to do is, how about we walk upstream and find out why they're falling in and ending up in that sad state of affairs at the end of that cesspool, and try and work on some of those reasons before we get there. And I think there's been some good success.
That sounds really practical too.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's when you start doing it, it's yeah, of course, I can keep the cycle going and arresting, and the person gets back on the street. And if we don't give them support and services for, again, addiction is a big driver of crime. If we don't try and partner and find the most, as you said, common sense and realistic solutions for these folks to break that cycle, then we're just going to be keeping the same methods going, and it's probably not going to have any success.
Yeah, revolving door for sure. I would imagine that one of the challenges for policing is the huge geographical areas that RCMP have to cover. And, of course, slow response times sometimes can come along with that. So would more officers obviously would be helpful, right? But that normally isn't it's not usually in the budget, right? For government budget to increase the fleet. So have we seen any increases in the number of officers in rural areas or not?
Yeah, so with in recent years, there's a thing, and I won't bore you with the details, but called the police funding model. So in smaller communities have had to change their funding structure to pay and contribute towards policing. And what that's done is it's given us, an increase in resources. There has been, over the last 4 years, there has been an increase. It's not as simple as putting a police officer in every corner. That just doesn't work, to be honest. It's about coming up with an overall strategy to increase numbers where they are needed 100% in the front lines, but also to come up with supports and different strategies. So I'll give an example is the crime reduction units that exist. So Southern Alberta and every other RCMP district has a crime reduction unit where their focus is on the highest, the criminals that create the most amount of harm for their communities. And having a team like that, what we've found is you take the top, say 10, or in our case, we deal with the top 100 offenders in the province. And of course, there are some in Southern Alberta. If we focus our energy on those folks, it can actually reduce crime a great deal, because it's not just catching someone who's maybe stealing a loaf of bread. It's going and trying to capture and keep in jail those folks that are causing an enormous amount of harm in communities. Our studies have found, and we use the crime severity index as a measuring stick for our top 100 offenders. And yes, there's the violent offenders that might commit one crime, one heinous crime, and that obviously raises their stats. But we have people that commit over and over again robberies and break and enters and domestic violence, and it's a repeat, as you said, like the revolving doors type of system. We're focusing on those folks, in addition to responding to calls and doing other preventive policing. But by focusing on those folks, if we take them off the street and spend some more time building bail packages and building assistance for the Crown to hopefully get those folks held in jail longer and get longer sentencing, then we're actually preventing a lot more crime than we are if we just kind of take a shotgun approach and try and tackle all of the problems that exist.
When it comes to like the crime of theft or property theft, are there any specific items that thieves are targeting? Is it mainly machinery and vehicles, or what are you seeing sort of in those rural areas?
I don't know if there's any specific things. What I will say is that vehicles are a huge problem in Alberta, theft of vehicles. We do a lot of programming. In the wintertime, we do Project Cold Start, which is focusing on the fact that people leave their vehicles running and go into stores. But outside of that, and especially in rural communities, folks will leave their keys on their dashboard or leave them under their visor and leave the car unlocked. 50% of vehicles are found to be stolen with the keys in the car. That is a massive number. So yes, most of the time criminals are doing crimes of opportunity. So yes, they'll go onto a rural property and they'll see what's out and about. If there's a shed open, that's where they're going to tackle looking for items, and they'll take whatever's available. So it is about target hardening. It is about taking some extra steps. My uncle has a beautiful ranch in Okotoks in southern Alberta, and we've traveled and visit him often. And I'm always telling him, and I think of him as our other great Albertans down south, is saying, yes, you have a beautiful community here, but people will potentially come and look and see, if your door is locked, or look and see if your vehicles are locked. And if the keys are there, that's what they're going to target. If not, they'll move on to the next property. So there's a lot of steps we can take to try and prevent that.
Definitely. I think rural residents probably don't have that tendency to lock up things as diligently as city dwellers do they?
Yeah, 100%. And I love that about rural Alberta and rural Canada. Canada is a safe place. Let's be very honest about this. It's a safe place. However, there's going to be people that'll disrupt that peace, and small steps like locking your doors at night, closing your garage, locking up your sheds, that does do a massive amount of prevention when it comes to rural crime.
And I understand that roughly half of rural crimes happen between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., right? So can you maybe tell us about something called the 9 p.m. routine?
Yeah, so a 9 p.m. routine, and I'll refer back to my uncle. When we go to visit him with my kids, we go and do chores. The rural crime chore or rural property chores that you have to do, whether it's feeding animals, whether it's just taking care of the property. My suggestion to all rural Albertans, and all Albertans to be honest, is at that time when you're doing your nightly chores, do those extra steps. Like make sure that you leave lights on in strategic areas that you typically do. Make sure you lock up the barn if you have expensive equipment in there. Lock your vehicles up. If you have surveillance cameras, make sure that they're turned on and they're active and working. Close your doors. Do those little things. If you drive by your neighbor's house, in the middle of the night and you see that their garage is open, make a quick phone call and get them to close it. Right. All of those little steps truly will make neighborhoods safer, and you'll be less likely to be victimized.
Yeah, that kind of comes back to that rural crime watch, almost like the neighborhood watch, right?
Yep, 100%. And that's bring up a great partner of ours. The Rural Crime Watch is a great partner. We have Citizens on Patrol as partners. All of these things, I call them force multipliers. Police can't be on every corner, as we've said. So if you have the more eyes and ears that are out there is absolutely to our benefit. And it prevents crime, but it can provide intelligence. So we truly encourage every Albertan, if you see something even remotely suspicious, call us, please. Maybe it's nothing this time, but maybe it will lead us to understanding more trends and more patterns, and allow us to better serve the communities and better prevent crime.
Now, over the years, of course, there's been a lot of debate and controversy over what rural property owners can and can't do to protect themselves. So what are the rules, especially when it comes to using, say, firearms or some other kind of force to protect your own home?
So I'll be completely frank, I get this question a lot, and I'm not going to get into the specific rules and intricacies. Every situation is different, but I will give advice. I'm good at giving advice. My advice is 100%, and you bring up a good point for firearms. When we talk about the 9 o'clock rule, we talk about target hardening. I'm actually in the middle of starting a program that's going to be coming through in the near future about like an education program on firearms. We understand Albertans have a right to firearms, and we don't want to get in the way of that, but we do ask Albertans to lock those up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of crime guns that are stolen from good, hardworking rural Albertans that have guns for proper purposes, but they get stolen because they don't necessarily lock them up properly. So that is an item that is important. Now, getting back to your question, because I'm not dodging your question, my advice is this: there's nothing on your property that's worth yourself or your family members getting hurt for. There's just not. So, if you have an option to flee, if you have an option to get out of any situation, whether that's on a rural property, whether that's on a city property, whether that's in a storefront where you are observing crime, leave the crime fighting to the professionals. We're trained. We have proper tools. And that's just that. At the end of the day, I can't get into specifics. There's so much nuance to what could get you in trouble or not get in trouble. But I'll say there's very few chances that you won't have to escape. And the fight or flight, when it comes to a criminal on your property, it should be flight. You should be trying to get out of there with your family and loved ones as safely as possible, and avoid any confrontation with any people that are on your property for legal purposes.
All right. Well, great advice there. Thanks so much for being with us today, Mike. Looks like we're out of time, but appreciate having you on today.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Mike McCauley is the superintendent with the Alberta RCMP Community Safety and Wellbeing Branch. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.